A make-or-break moment for Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. This week on Firing Line.
Iowa, thank you. We love you all.
After Donald Trump's decisive win in the Iowa caucuses, all eyes are on the Granite State, the first in the nation primary with a history of notable upsets.
New Hampshire tonight has made Bill Clinton the comeback kid.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is in a head-to-head race with the former president. Haley performs well with moderates and independents who can vote in New Hampshire's GOP primary.
The next president of the United States, Nikki Haley!
Governor Chris Sununu, the popular Republican governor of this swing state, is her biggest and most important supporter.
She's a winner, and she can get more winners and build more winners. Trump is a loser.
With the battle lines drawn,
Nikki Haley is a disaster.
Chaos follows him.
and as voters prepare to cast their first primary ballots in the 2024 presidential election, what does New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu say now?
Firing Line with Margaret Hoover is made possible in part by Robert Granieri, Vanessa and Henry Cornell, the Fairweather Foundation, the Tepper Foundation, Peter and Mary Calicow, the Asnes Family Foundation, the Beth and Ravenel Curry Foundation, the McKenna Family Foundation, Charles R. Schwab, and by the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, Damon Button, Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Roger and Susan Hertog, Cheryl Cohen Efron and Blair Efron, Al and Kathy Hubbard. Corporate funding is provided by Stevens Inc. and by Pfizer Inc.
Governor Chris Sununu, welcome to Firing Line.
This is great. I'm very excited. Thanks for having me on.
After this week's decisive win by Donald Trump in Iowa, all eyes are on your state of New Hampshire,
Sure.
where you have endorsed Governor Nikki Haley. What are the stakes of New Hampshire?
Well, the stakes are very high for Donald Trump because in the first three states of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, it's all been said, and he has said he's going to win them. He's going to win them hands down and run away with it. He did well in Iowa, as was expected, but Nikki did well. No one expected Nikki to have such a strong finish. He went from 2% to 20%, almost beat DeSantis for second place when DeSantis had put every dollar, every person, everything he had into Iowa. In New Hampshire, right now, we effectively have a one-on-one race, right? It is Haley versus Trump, and that's an amazing opportunity. I always wanted to get it to Haley versus Trump by Super Tuesday, but now we have Haley versus Trump. The glide path really is designed for Nikki because she goes from here. She's going to do very, very well. She's definitely going to end up in second place, may even beat Trump, which would be an absolute shocker, but that actually could happen. And then she goes to South Carolina, a state she has won multiple times. And when it's just a one-on-one race, you're not asking the voter to sift out 10 different candidates like we did back in 2016. It's one-on-one. It's a clear choice. And in South Carolina, they know the alternative, and it looks really good in Nikki Haley.
It sounded to me just now like you were lowering expectations in terms of what we should expect in terms of her finish here, that a second place finish would be a win.
Oh, sure.
Isn't a win if it's a two-person race?
No one's ever expected Nikki Haley to win any of these early states. I mean, no polls have said she's going to win. No one has ever. Her team has never said. We've never said she's definitely going to win New Hampshire or South Carolina.
So you think a second place finish is a win for her?
Of course, yeah. Because again, Because there were 14 candidates in this race. For me, it's always been about getting through the first three states with a one-on-one. It's happening sooner than later. So if anything,
you're saying the win is that she's winnowed the field.
Yeah, that's a huge win. That's exactly what America was asking.
So Ron DeSantis is a non-factor, is what you're saying?
Complete, yeah.
Okay. Unaffiliated voters are 40% of the voters in New Hampshire. About 30% are Republicans, 30% are Democrats.
Yeah.
How does this impact Nikki Haley's chances?
The more voters, whether they're Republican or undeclared, the more voters that turn out, the more it doesn't favor the incumbent, which is Donald Trump. He's effectively the incumbent, right? So the higher voter turnout we can get, the better chance we have of those are the voters that are new voters, that are more likely to be no voters, that say, we want change, we want something different. We're not going with old school, with yesterday's news. And New Hampshire has a tradition of doing that, a tradition of saying, give us the next generation of leadership, not the same old thing. And that's what Trump is, kind of the same old thing.
Compared to 2016, Iowa had low turnout. Even more than the weather could account for.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Does that give you pause about the degree of enthusiasm this time around?
Absolutely. When you ask those Trump voters, or a lot of voters, who are you going to vote for? Well, I guess Trump's just going to win anyway. And there's folks that say, well, I don't like Trump, but he's going to win anyway. I won't go vote. So you had a lot of that apathy over and above the cold weather issue in Iowa. Very concerned about it here. And that's why when you do the retail campaigning, right? Nikki was in Littleton. She's in Whitefield. She's in the north part of the state. And that actually helps galvanize a new turnout the vote opportunity there.
Demographically, polls suggest that Nikki should do better in New Hampshire than in Iowa because, well, for one thing,
and she will.
Higher income state, higher educated state. These are groups she performs well with. What is the message that Haley should use to New Hampshire's Trump Sununu voters, the non-college educated, blue-collar, voters who vote for Trump?
Well, I would say this. I mean, going after a Trump voter is great because that's effectively 2 votes. You're taking one from him and you're adding one to yourself. And because when it's a binary race, that's the real opportunity that you have there. The discussion is don't assume that Trump is going to run away with this, right? Those are the voters most likely to move because they haven't really looked at a lot of policy. They just said, well, I guess he's going to win. But when they, again, shatter that presumption, kind of show that this really is a horse race at this point, people go, oh, wait. And they take the last week, they come to the town halls, they engage with her on her retail stops. That's the opportunity to bring those Trump voters across. That hardcore 35% that are absolute zealots, almost like a cult or something. I mean, they're not moving. They are not moving. At the end of the day, though, the ones that, again, are just kind of in it, I guess he's going to win. Those are the ones you want to engage a little more here in New Hampshire.
So do you think that 30% of the Republican Party is like a cult?
No. Look, there's about 35% of the Trump voter that is just not going to be moved.
Yeah.
That's it. They're just not going to be moved. There's very, very little that you can say to them to get them off the bandwagon.
How much is New Hampshire like an upset? I mean, how much does the history of the New Hampshire primary that delivered Bill Clinton, the comeback kid, that made John McCain relevant in 2000 again, how much does that...
H.W. Bush, right? And back in 88, McCain. McCain had a huge upset win.
How much is that baked in the DNA of New Hampshire primary voters?
Yeah, we like that. We like the underdog. We like candidates that are scrappy and honest and just connect with us, at a very real level. Don't stand on a stage and just tell us what we want to hear. Get in your fancy plane and go back to the country club. That's kind of the Trump thing right now.
In the campaign so far, we've seen various approaches to Donald Trump. You've seen Vivek Ramaswamy flatter him endlessly. You saw Chris Christie here in New Hampshire aggressively go after his lawlessness. And
Chris took the nuclear option on Trump. Not that he was wrong, but it was tough. Yeah.
What is the best way to run in New Hampshire? If you're going to, what is the best way for a Republican to challenge Donald Trump? In New Hampshire?
I honestly believe the way Nikki is doing it is the best way.
It seems like she's taking the Goldilocks approach, right? She's contrasting herself with policy. She's not going after she's not taking the nuclear option.
Well, she called him out on January 6th. She called him on election denial. She's called him on his failed policies.
She did go back on the January 6th piece, though.
Well, in the last debate, again, she called him out on it. So, again, she's spending the time about what she's going to deliver. For a New Hampshire voter, that's important. We have a lot of voter engagement here.
Trump's approach to Nikki Haley is to demean her, call her bird brain.
He does that to everybody.
He does it to everybody. But there's a special flavor, though, with Nikki. It's bird brain. It's that she's not tough enough. It feels sexist. Do you think it's sexist?
I would say he has a history of that, so it shouldn't surprise anybody, right? Obviously, he has a history of demeaning women.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't surprise anyone. I'm not going to answer that. I would say Nikki's the only one.
You think it's sexist?
I think he has a history of making sexist remarks. I'll let Nikki answer that. But yeah, it's demeaning.
Tell me something. On the campaign trail, here with your electorate, do policy arguments against Trump matter? You all have constantly pointed out that he promised a border wall and he didn't deliver it. He promised to revive the manufacturing sector and it shrunk on his watch. He promised to eliminate the federal debt and it grew by $7 trillion, almost more dollars on his watch. Do New Hampshire Republicans consider these broken promises?
They do. They do. More than anywhere else. I mean, to be sure, because again, we get into a lot of the nitty-gritty details. So I can't speak to other states, but it definitely matters here. You got to know your stuff.
You've said in the past that you aren't supporting Donald Trump, you're supporting Nikki Haley because of the electability argument.
That's a piece of it.
What's the rest of the argument for Nikki?
Well, so let's talk about electability. When I talk about electability, it isn't just Trump winning or losing. It's how he affects the rest of the ticket, right? So with Nikki Haley, we win Senate seats back. We win governorships. We win school board seats. We win all these seats that we have lost that we should have won over the past 6 years. I'm so tired of losing with this guy. He's a loser. So I want a winner. So electability isn't just winning the seat. Trump could potentially maybe squeak out a win, but he'd have no ability to do anything he's talking about, right? So what's the point there? Let's elect someone that we know will win and carry all these other Republican initiatives along the way. That's how you get stuff done.
Let's compare a hypothetical President Haley versus President Trump. What would be the outcome of a President Nikki Haley on immigration and the border versus a second Trump presidency?
Well, she can actually build the wall and secure it. You have to secure the border.
Why can she do it and Trump couldn't?
Because she has a record as a governor. She has a record of knowing how to work with the legislature, even when they opposed her. As a governor, you have to do that. Trump's, one of his ultimate flaws was that he thought you could run the government like a business. It sounds good, but it's public money, there's checks and balances, there's a Congress and legislature. Even when he had Republicans in the House and Senate, he couldn't get stuff done. And you think he's not gonna have likely the Senate back, right? So you think Democrats are gonna work with him to do anything? God, no. And that's why he said, well, I'll just be a dictator for a couple of days or whatever it is, right? That kind of stuff gets a little scary, because what he's saying is, because I don't know how to do it the right way, because I'm not strong enough to do it the right way, I'll just try to bulldoze my way through. Nikki has a record of knowing how to work in the public sphere and get something done and negotiating this stuff out. That's the key to all of it.
As former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley says that continuing support for Ukraine is imperative. This puts her stance at odds with Donald Trump, who refuses to commit to sending U.S. aid to Ukraine. How is the future of Ukraine under President Haley versus a President Trump?
Nikki Haley has a better understanding and expertise of international issues than all of these candidates, than any candidate all the candidates put
Even
together.
Donald Trump, who has been president.
Oh, absolutely. Trump showed up at the meetings doing, taking the policies of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. They're the ones that understand these details. Trump calls Putin his friend, and he doesn't understand the nuances of the issues overseas. He negotiates overseas as if they're Americans that he's negotiating with, and it's a very culturally different thing. So again, I think her experience there, her willingness to put America first and make sure that, as she did in the UN, she took the kick me sign off her backs at the UN, made sure America was respected again. It's a very important attitude, philosophy, and experience going into the international sphere that Trump cannot match.
What is the economic outlook of the United States under President Haley versus a President Trump?
Balanced, stable. I mean, inflation is driven by one thing. Inflation is the biggest crusher, right, on low-income and middle-income families in America. When you balance a budget at the state level and force a balanced budget at the federal level, all the opportunity now flows forward. You got to make tough decisions, to be sure, but that gets your house in order. When you have to borrow or print money, it's the only thing that creates inflation in America. That's the only thing, borrowing and printing money. Trump was horrible at it. And so for all those conservatives who are tired of the federal government mistreating and misrespecting their hard-earned dollars, that is exactly why you should not be voting for Donald Trump. You want an accountant. I mean, an accountant in the White House like Nikki Haley, what an amazing opportunity. She brings that stability back to the table. That's an amazing opportunity that we just haven't had in decades.
What does the future of the Republican Party look like after President Haley
next
is
week,
elected?
who knows?
So you think the future of the Republican Party actually does hinge on New Hampshire?
Look, from New Hampshire could create an opportunity to get Nikki elected in South Carolina and then Super Tuesday, and that would be amazing.
And then, so what does the future of the Republican Party look like if Nikki Haley is the nominee and then becomes the president versus the future of the Republican Party if Donald Trump is reelected?
Look, Nikki brings she allows everyone to come together. As a strong conservative, she's somebody everybody can galvanize around. We haven't had that in so long, right? The same can be said for the Democrats, though. Understand, Democrats are in their own turmoil. Now, they have the presidency, and they're not in a big election battle right now, so they're able to kind of avoid a lot of their internal strife. But believe you me, there's massive internal strife there, too. So, I try not to say, well, I think 5 years, this is where the party is going to be. Nobody really knows. I think what's going to happen is this. Trump is at the center of the chaos and the disruption. There's no question about that.
That's putting it lightly, isn't it?
Well, but he is. It is putting it lightly. But he absolutely is. Over time, well, let me put it this way. I think this is an important point. A former president once said to me, "We've gone through a lot in this country. We went through a civil war that almost tore us apart, but our institutions stood strong. We went through a world war. A couple of them. We went through the 60s, where you had great American voices and leaders literally getting assassinated in front of us. And people said it's all over for America. 9/11, a pandemic. Our institutions stood strong. Bad leaders come and go, but the institutions here are strong. So this is, I think, where there's a lot of polarization and firebranding right now. I think as those folks kind of aren't part of the system anymore, eventually, the temperature comes down a little. And then slowly both of the parties, there's always going to be a spectrum within those parties, but less of the polarization within themselves. So it's a domino chain reaction. It all starts with leadership. And again, Donald Trump is gasoline on the fire. Nikki Haley brings folks together with a record of experience. I want young people in this party. I want the suburban moms back, right? I want a lot of folks that have walked away from this party to get back in. But right now, there's a wall there. We're not going to win unless we build the party bigger. And I'm tired of losing. People ask me, why I'm so passionate about Nikki Haley. She's a winner, and she can get more winners and build more winners. That's what this is all about. Trump is a loser. Look, we lost big in 2022. All of his candidates, all of his branding, all lost all across the country, vehemently rejected. So I'm just tired of that level of losing. I want more Republicans to win. And I think more Republicans should want more Republicans to win, but it only happens if we say, thank you for your service, Mr. Trump. We're moving on to the future.
So you won't vote for Donald Trump?
Well, if he's the nominee, if we have to go with our weakest candidate, of course I'm going to vote for the Republican because that's how bad Biden is. But yeah, we're talking primary here,
yeah.
And of course,
But what about the consequences? I mean, you painted this picture of how damning he would be on foreign policy, how damning he would be on the border again, how damning he would be on fiscal policy again, how bad he would be for our economic outlook again.
But look at what Biden's done. Look at how bad this administration is. Put it this way, Biden is so bad. Like Trump had no electability 6 months ago. Biden has become so bad that now he actually could squeak out a win. That's how bad Joe Biden is that America would take all that chaos, potentially, over Joe Biden.
Look, on a policy front, apples to apples, I can understand the argument you're making on a policy front for Trump over Biden. The difference, as we all know, is that there's never been a president in history who has tried to hold on to power and participated actively in a violent act at the Capitol to hold on to power, that peaceful transition of power, which has been the bedrock of American institutions and our democracy. So can you really consider this an apples-to-apples transaction when you consider the future of the country under a future Biden, a second Biden, or a second Trump presidency?
Well, according to the polls, most Americans agree with me.
Well,
according to the polls, Trump would beat Biden today by a point or two. So this isn't some obscure thought that the Republican governor is going to get Biden the Republican nominee. I hope that doesn't shock anybody.
But when you do look at the polls, you also notice that Trump begins to lose under the hypothesis or under the circumstance where there is a conviction of Donald Trump.
There's not going to be,
And I know you don't think there's going to be a conviction, but I'm just saying.
That's a hypothetical that's way out there. If everyone's waiting for a conviction, some external factor to stop Donald Trump, don't. Go to the ballot box. You better participate in democracy. Democracy is what moves Donald Trump on. Democracy is what beats Donald Trump. But you got to go out. If you're in New Hampshire and South Carolina, you got to go vote. Don't wait for somebody else to fix this problem that you foresee. Go participate. Go be the solution. That's the democratic process.
I fully endorse that approach. I think that is the healthy approach. I think you have to beat people at the ballot box. Why, though, when people go into the ballot box? Because you have said in New Hampshire, the court cases are not weighing on people's as a part
anywhere
of their
in America they are.
Okay. Yeah. So explain that to me why, for example, in one court case, a jury of Trump's peers found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation in a civil case for an incident that the judge called rape. Why do you think that doesn't resonate with voters? So
there's a couple of things going on. You have multiple court cases. This is why it doesn't resonate. You have multiple cases. Some are civil, some are federal, some are state, some are over elections, some are over the sexual abuse and all this kind of stuff. Some are legitimate. Some people think they are politically driven, and I would agree with that. I think there's some of these are but it's all convoluted. You get a different story about a different court case every day.
You're saying if there were one case, it'd be fine, but 91 felonies is too confusing to follow?
It's all become white noise, unfortunately. The average person out there is just trying to figure out how to pay for their next meal at McDonald's because of inflation. The average person out there today in New Hampshire, it's 14 degrees. They just got a bill for $750 to fill their fuel tank, and they're figuring out how to pay for it. They understand there's a lot of this chaos out there with Trump and all this other stuff, but don't fool yourself. Most American voters are not following the details. They're not following the bouncing ball, knowing that this is going to go on for years, so it won't enter the calculus when they come to the ballot box. So
as you say, people are thinking about what the best choice for them is. Are you really such a partisan that you think that you would vote for Donald Trump, that would be the best choice for the country if he were the nominee?
Well, I'm such a partisan. I don't
I mean,
I don't care for that. That's labeling right there. Are we othering?
No, because
Are
you
we
say you're a
othering now?
Republican and you're only going to vote for the Republican, even if he has done all these things.
Yeah, it's a binary choice. If you don't vote for one, it's essentially a vote for the other. And what Biden has done to this country, the lack of management, the massive amounts of this wokeism, this socialism. Yes, I would vote for the Republican. This is my other hope. It's not just the president. It's who he surrounds with. My hope is that he would bring in a better team. Biden's cabinet is awful. I mean, awful. Trump at least has the ability to put a good team in place.
Does he?
Sure, he has the opportunity to do it, yeah.
If it's Governor Haley versus Biden in New Hampshire, who wins?
Oh, Haley would crush him.
If it's Trump v. Biden, who wins?
In New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Oh, Biden. Yeah, Biden would beat him again.
You say that Biden would be worse than Trump.
Oh, without a doubt.
But how do you then really grapple with the things Donald Trump is saying he will do when he's president? He says he'll use the Justice Department to target his critics. He says that he will terminate the Constitution and use the military for domestic law enforcement. I mean, he's saying things that are outrageous, and he's said them much before. But you know what? He's also more organized this time.
He is.
And he has very effective people around him. Does that give you pause?
No, campaign rhetoric, extremism, nothing new. I mean, that's what Trump has done forever, right? Trump has said outrageous things since well before he was president. He's never slowed down.
But he's been able to mobilize violence now, which we've seen since then. And does that give you pause?
In terms of?
Well, after January 6th.
You're talking about January 6th. Of course it gives me pause. There's no question. It should give everybody pause. Nobody likes to hear that kind of stuff, especially out of someone who could be the leader of the free world. But I believe he could potentially put a much better team together to manage the individual aspects of government far and away better than Joe Biden. There's no question about that. And most Americans would agree with me.
I'm just going to say it feels like fantasy thinking, but I'm going to move on.
What fantasy thinking? What, that he would put a good team together?
That he would put a great team together. That we have any
better
reason
than Biden's.
To believe.
Biden's is that bad.
To your point about the strength of institutions. I mean, he wants to use the Justice Department to target his enemies.
Look, I don't want to get into there are arguments to be made that the Democrats have done just that.
But no Democrats have marshaled violence against the Capitol to hold on to political power.
January 6th was awful, right? It was absolutely awful. But to say, well, just because of January 6th, he's not going to get elected. No.
No, I'm not saying just because of January 6th, he won't get elected. I think he very well could get elected, but should he?
If the people vote for him, yes. Right? Because it's not up to you. It's not up to me. It's only about the voters.
Isn't there a degree of leadership here? You're the governor of a state. You have
because the voters
to say
decide.
What should happen. I mean, but you can take you're taking a stick for Nikki Haley.
No, I have to be honest. That's a really dangerous premise that you're putting out there. That because I'm a governor, I should say what should happen. Or the voters decide what should happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no
it's all about the voters.
But you would still vote for Trump under that circumstance.
Yeah.
I want to move on, but I think the point is, it's hard to believe that you, Chris Sununu, who recognizes how severe January 6th was, would still vote for Donald Trump.
So I've been very consistent on supporting the Republicans.
But I know because you're a good partisan.
I'm not a Democrat. I'm not an independent.
So there's no Republican you wouldn't vote for, even a convicted criminal.
He's not going to be convicted. Again, you're throwing the hypothetical out there.
Well, you don't know that.
Yeah.
We don't know that. I mean, we can guess that, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I know. You're asking me hypotheticals. I'm going to go on what it is today.
Let's move on. Your dad, John Sununu, after being governor of New Hampshire, having the same job you have now, went on to be chief of staff for George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, great president.
George H.W. Bush appeared on Firing Line when he was chair of the RNC, and he was discussing how Republican candidates should handle President Nixon in the wake of Watergate.
Okay.
See what he said then.
As head of the Republican Party, is it uncomfortable for you to cooperate with people running for Congress on a I have nothing to do with Nixon ticket?
Well, it's not. I think we've got room in our party for diversity. It's not uncomfortable for me to cooperate with them. And my advice to them, and very few people seek it these days, but if they do, I'll say, look, emphasize the good things that the administration has done, and jump up and down and say you don't like Watergate. Be against the bad things, be for the good things.
Very different approach to Nixon than I think is the approach to Trump. Trump has been endorsed by more than half of GOP members of Congress and several of your fellow governors. Is there room in the party for, like there was with Nixon, a diversity of viewpoints about Donald Trump?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. No, look,
What's the evidence of that?
Well, as the former president said, you know, there's a lot of room in the party for a lot of different ideas. There's no doubt about it.
Look, you're a successful Republican governor in what is essentially a blue state, purple state. Is there a model here for a Republican who can win nationally?
Look, people want someone they connect with. They want someone who's likable. They don't need to buy off on every policy. They don't need to agree with you on every policy to be successful. They just want to know that you're genuine, that you're connecting with them. And at the end of the day, you have ability to get stuff done and move the ball forward the way they want it moved forward. Yeah.
Governor Sununu.
You bet.
Thank you for
being
being
here. This is great.
here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Firing Line with Margaret Hoover is made possible in part by Robert Granieri, Vanessa and Henry Cornell, the Fairweather Foundation, the Tepper Foundation, Peter and Mary Calicow, the Asnes Family Foundation, the Beth and Ravenel Curry Foundation, the McKenna Family Foundation, Charles R. Schwab, and by the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, Damon Button, Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Roger and Susan Hertog, Cheryl Cohen Efron and Blair Efron, Al and Kathy Hubbard. Corporate funding is provided by Stevens Inc. and by Pfizer Inc.
You're watching PBS.